So it seems to me that we humans prefer to believe in absolutes. We like to believe in constants, absolute truths, absolute morals, in order to be able to say what's good, what's bad, what's right and wrong, I'm this and you're that. It gives us some kind of fake feeling of control and certainty, an illusion, an imagined reality, something to hold on to. Religions are pretty good in providing such a feeling, and in our cultures we also have this implicit consent to absolutes, with agreements on certain absolutes within the culture, within a given context, labeling certain things as good or bad, which allows us to say how things should be. It seems to me very practical and maybe even necessity to have those things in order to gain social harmony, peace, to be able to survive as a society. Yet it's also extremely simplifying the vast complexity of reality, to know with certainty what I've done is good or right. So this innate need, it gives us some sense of comfort, ease of mind, calmness even. And if there would be no absolute, we would just simply create one. We humans are usually very good in creating superstitions around the unknown. Like we didn't know what the sun is, so we call it God. Nowadays we know it's kind of a fusion reactor. So we sometimes prefer to rather blindly obey and trust in authority to get this kind of comfort. When I talk about absolutes, it might be a little bit overlapping with the term of objectivity. So an absolute is something, a value which is regarded as universally valid, so it doesn't need a relation to other things. No reference is needed for its value to be recognized. It's regardless of any circumstances. In religious context, we also have the term of absolute morality. Whereas relative would be changing with the circumstances. On the other hand, objectivity, when something is objective, its existence is independent from human opinion or human knowledge. It's more general or simply valid. But universality does not imply objectivity. On the other hand, subjective means a matter of personal opinion, and intuitively we know that relative is not the same as subjective, the same as absolute is not the same as objective. If something is absolute, it's usually independent from a context. Yet it seems to me everything is determined by context. In logic, we use something like a variable interpretation in an equation. So once we give these abstract symbols a concrete value, its value can be evaluated. Instead of a context, we can also say perspective. For me, I will use it synonymously. So nothing is by itself, nothing is absolute, meaning totally independent from anything else. And also for any seemingly absolute judgment, it's possible to create a counter scenario by changing the context, by changing the variables and turning it around. For example, is wood hard or soft? Well, we don't know until we put it in a concrete context. It is hard compared to a feather or even to our own body, so therefore intuitively we would say wood is hard. But if we compare it to a diamond, it's rather soft. Is 240 a lot or a little? Well, there we immediately get a difficulty, because depending in which context, so it's little if it is my salary in euros per month for a regular job, but it's still a lot if we regard 240 as temperature in Celsius degrees. Yet again, in relation to human body temperature, it's quite a lot. If you think about steel industry, it's actually rather little. Could also ask yourself, what's better, a hammer or a screwdriver? I cannot give an absolute judgment about that, because I need context. I need to know, do I have a nail or a screw? It's also very much relative to yin and yang, to Taoism. What is fast and slow, thinking, feeling, men and women, how they complement each other, how day and night turns into each other. And everything depends on each other, and everything is relative to each other. Also, maybe to see the bigger picture, I consider there are 3 layers of truths, or how to see things. On the first level, let's call it the body level, based on intuition or human experience, there are absolutes. Absolutes do exist. We can say killing is bad, full stop. Again, due to necessity for social harmony and just the way we perceive reality, it's a very useful thing to believe that. Yet underneath, let's call it the mind layer of truth, where we use logic, reason, thinking, there are no absolutes, which is, in my opinion, rather easily accessible through logic. That's also what I'm going to talk about. Yet underneath, on the last third layer, let's say spirit, the metaphysical, the spiritual, there is again an absolute, but only one absolute, usually referred to as God, or Chinese philosophy Tao. But that's a little bit too far from me, too far from the human experience. It seems impractical, not useful anymore, and also highly speculative. So if we go to something more concrete, space. Imagine a completely empty universe. And there's one single dot, this red, shiny dot. And if there's nothing else than the dot, it would be impossible to tell whether it's moving or not, because there's no reference point. Movement is always in relation, meaning relative to something else. So what if we add in a second dot? So they change in distance to each other, but which one is moving? Does the one go forward or the other go backward? How can we tell? Well, let's just continue that approach and add many more dots, many more reference points. Still the issue remains. We usually then have something like a consensus majority approach, where we say, well, if there are 10 points and 9 are kind of static and 1 is moving, then we say the 1 is moving instead of the other way around, because the minority must be the moving one, the crazy one. Like if I'm walking over the earth, it's not the earth which is rotating, but me moving over the earth. There's also a very fascinating sensation happening when I sit in the train and the train is in the station. I look outside and I can see nothing but the neighboring train, so my whole visual field is occupied by the train and I can't see anything else. And then suddenly the train is moving, or are we moving? It's a really funny sensation, because I also get a little bit nauseous, because the mind is constantly switching from one to the other. I can't feel the acceleration of the train, but it seems as we are moving, so that's quite funny. We could also agree that the one who initiates movement will be the absolute one who is moving, but still not clear in absolute terms actually who moves through space. Reminds me also of the joke from Chuck Norris. When Chuck Norris is doing push-ups, he doesn't push himself up, he pushes the earth away from him. And somehow we even wouldn't be able to tell. In computer games, there's something similar, like jump and runs, like Super Mario. The question is Mario actually really running, or is just the background moving? And a lot of computer animations use this kind of illusion, because obviously the screen is limited in space, so we need to move the background. Still, for us as humans, we experience it as if the character is moving. 3D games, the same. Is the character moving over a static plane and the camera moving along with it? Or is actually the character frozen on its location, it moves in a funny way, its legs, and the whole environment is moving? There are also these rather old school games with this airplane shooting stuff, and there it's very visible that the airplane actually hovers statically and it's just a background which moves vertically. Because again, the screen is just limited, and otherwise the airplane would be immediately gone. For our eyes, it still looks real. It's a really good illusion, it's like magic. When people ask me about a movie or, let's say, a book, and they ask me whether the book is good, one person could say it's good, the other person could say it's bad. Now there's a third person trying to figure out what is the book, is it good or bad? So we start to fight about an absolute, so we get confused with it being a relative judgment. But the thing is, there is no objective reality. There is no such thing as what is the book. There are just interpretations of it. In graph theory, we would say the book is kind of an object, the dot, the node. And it's not that the node, the book, is assigned an absolute objective property. It's rather the relation, so the link, the line, also called edge, between nodes gets this value assigned. So it's not the book itself which can be said which is good or bad. It's the lines between the objects, these nodes, which get the assignment of good or bad. Not the thing itself, whether it's a book, a movie, an apple, sugar, drugs, whatever, is neither good or bad, healthy or unhealthy. It always depends on how we relate to it, whether we use or abuse it. It's all relative to us. Sometimes people would ask, are you good in sex or not? Some people would say, he's really good in sex. And the other person might say, no, sex with him is really shitty. And so I would wonder, am I not good in sex or not? What is it? Well, it seems it depends on the relation. And talking about apples, I think we were all grown up with the idea, the conviction of apples are being healthy. That's a rather absolute statement. So the property of healthy is assigned to the object, apple. But how about eating nothing but apples, like 2 kilograms per day, for like 10 years? No one would agree that this is healthy. It's definitely unhealthy. So that guy called Paracelsus, he's famous for his statement of the dose makes a poison. At the same time, we can also not therefore say that apples are unhealthy. And nor is it healthy, it just is. Nothing is healthy or unhealthy by itself, but only moderation dictates healthiness. As long as we avoid extremes, we are good, but the moment we go into extremes, it becomes unhealthy. Can also do it the other way around, saying usually sugar is bad, but what about eating 1 gram sugar once a year? That doesn't harm. There's absolutely no negative health impact. A doctor wouldn't be able to detect any harm being done to the body if done so rarely, yet enjoying it so much. If I enjoy it, there might be even a positive impact on my mental health, and due to the body-mind connection, there might be even a consequence ultimately leading to a positive impact on my physical health. Does that mean that sugar is healthy? No, I wouldn't say so. It depends. We can do the same thing with junk food, with drugs like cigarettes even. But you get the point, I guess. So, how much healthy food can we eat until it's unhealthy for the mind? And how much unhealthy food shall we eat to keep our minds healthy? Let's go to something more abstract maybe. People sometimes ask me, how are you? And I do have difficulties with this kind of question because of several reasons. Yet I would then reply, good. Well, good, it's not really a description of my state of being, but rather a judgment. So I would say it's better to say, I feel happiness, I feel joy, I feel sadness or anger. Or maybe even describe some physical sensations. But is it always the case that happiness is good? Usually I would say yes, but still I would say it depends on context, it's relative. If my mother would die, I think it's very natural to be sad, natural meaning healthy. I wouldn't say it's good to be happy, good meaning appropriate, because that most likely means that I'm avoiding, so it's rather psychologically unhealthy. If I'm a child and I want to stay at home, I want to be sick, I want to be able to convince my mother to let me stay at home. So feeling weak and dizzy might be desirable in this context to reach my goal, thus it would be good. So good seems to me to be a shortcut of saying it's beneficial towards my current specific goals. And those goals are not absolute, they're not permanent, they change over time, and sometimes they're even completely oppositional. So whether something is good or bad depends on, meaning relates to our current goals. In psychology, we give people mental disorders telling them they're good or bad. While everything has its pros and cons, I would say, depending on the context. When you take a full-fledged narcissist, for example, these people really perform on the stage because due to their overly self-confidence. A person with autism, with love for details, might be extremely good in working in quality assurance. A psychopath, which we usually would agree is not a good thing, but send him on the battlefield during a war. These people totally lack empathy, but they're amazing there, because empathy is something which might not be of benefit during war times. So homicide suddenly is not only not illegal anymore, but it's actually desired. So thus I would say there are no wrong people, like what we call mental disorder, some mental disease. It's just a matter that we put them in the wrong places, so put in the wrong context. Behavior in general can be considered as good and bad, or right and wrong. But again, absolute judgments seem impossible for me, as everything is relative. Is lying, stealing or killing always bad under all circumstances, disregarding the context, the environment and its reasons, the intention of what we do? Philosophy, there's this categorical imperative saying lying is bad, full stop. But what if I'm in a room and I see someone running away and he's hiding right in front of me and I know where he is. Another person rushes in with a weapon and asks me where that person is. So should I tell, yeah, he's hiding there and then most likely getting killed, or should I lie instead? Are there cases, are there scenarios where lying could be actually a necessary, therefore good thing? The same with stealing and killing. Well, in religion, in Christianity, it's made very simple for us because we have the 10 Commandments, absolute rules of what's good, what's bad. Yet I can continue creating counterexample where it's the other way around. Interesting maybe also to know that the word absolute itself has its origin in religion. Nothing is absolute but God. God is the only one who doesn't need anything to refer to relate to. God is existing only by himself. Yet in our human experience we all agree intuitively on what's hard and what's soft, what's up and down, what's left and right, because we all use the same frame of reference. And within that there are absolutes. I mean, the most basic goal as biological units within that context is pleasure seeking, pain avoiding, next to survival and reproduction needs. It is deeply programmed into our DNA as a result of like 4 billion years of evolution, that everything which is according to this goal is considered to be good. Pleasure is good, pain is bad. Sounds a little bit hedonistic to me, because I still consider going to the dentist as good, although it gives me pain and actually no pleasure at all. Well, anyways, maybe also relating to that is to be able to distinguish between the inside and the outside. Only when there's an outside, a boundary, we can see what's on the inside. It's like trying to tell the fish what's water. He will not know because he's never experienced something outside. I also learned about my own cultural background by moving to another culture. It's like saying that the finger cannot point to itself, the tongue cannot taste itself, the knife cannot cut itself, the fire cannot burn itself, and the eye cannot see itself, whether it's a physical organ or the self, the I, the me. It's like a baby being born on an island, completely alone, has no personality because it cannot relate to someone else. It needs its relation, needs to be relative. The me is defined through the you, and therefore I'm I because you are you. But if there would be no you, there would be no I. So it's all relative. Well, to conclude, I personally prefer truth over comfort. The red pill, going down the rabbit hole. I don't want to sacrifice seeing clearly just in order to feel a bit better. Yes, I agree, ignorance can be bliss and knowledge sometimes hurts. It feels shitty, but I would say it's worth it. Yet again, the goal is usually neither to have one or the other, but find balance between the two forces, moderation. Is left or right-winged better? Which political opinion should I have? I would say it doesn't really matter, as long as there's balance and interaction between the two forces. Yet at the same time I can see there's this need to believe in one being better than the other, to kind of play the game that people play, the role within that game. Yet if we look at the bigger picture, both are necessary, and both are necessary to believe that whatever they believe in is the right thing in absolute terms. How do we know what's really good? Again, looking at the bigger picture, or in the long run, with all its hidden consequences. Ultimately, God's plan is invisible to us. I want to close with a few quotes. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. People are very much entitled to their own opinions, but not to their own facts. And everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Ultimately, we can summarize with: the only absolute statement is that there is no absolute statement. Thank you.